Hey everybody, Nicholas Snow. You are watching PromoHomo.tv, and as promised, I'm continuing my one-on-one interviews with candidates for the Palm Springs City Council. Coming up next, Christy Holstege. When I did my first interview, it was completely random. I'm going to just see, I'm not straight and neither is my camera angle. So, there we go. My first interview was very random. I never prepare my questions for interviews in advance. I always make them up. However, when I realized that I was going to interview all of the city council candidates and not just one, to be fair, I did come up with all of the same questions, which I will offer to the candidates. And if other questions are inspired by the conversation, you can bet that I will bring those questions. No topics are off limits. And I'm treating all of these interviews equitably and fairly. And with that, I'm going to turn the camera around to our special guest today, Christy Holstege. Hi, Christy.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here. I've been a fan of yours for a long time.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, first question I'm asking is, what is inspiring you to run for city council?
Sure. So I went to law school to study public service, and I've dedicated my entire career to public service in Palm Springs. So I started my career here in Palm Springs. I got a Stanford Public Interest Fellowship to build a legal aid clinic at Shelter from the Storm, and I've worked for 5 years here in Palm Springs as a local attorney, representing veterans, people with disabilities, domestic violence victims, tenants, workers, and a wide range of people who live in Palm Springs. I was inspired to run. I currently serve on the Homelessness Task Force and the Human Rights Commission with the City of Palm Springs. And I'm running because I thought we need a new voice and fresh ideas to build a Palm Springs that works for all of us, to represent everyone in our community, to be a voice for the people who don't always have a voice at the table, and to really work on the issues that are facing Palm Springs at this time.
And since I've done this interview now 3 times with 3 different people, I'm starting to know what questions people feel most comfortable with and least comfortable with. This is one of the ones that people don't necessarily jump up and down about, but what sets you apart from the other candidates? What makes you the choice?
Sure. I am set apart, and I'm a strong candidate because I'm extremely qualified. So I've studied local government law at Stanford Law School. I serve on city commissions now. I serve on a number of local boards. So I'm on the board of directors for Well in the Desert, Coachella Valley Housing Coalition, which builds affordable housing, Planned Parenthood, and I do healthcare law. So I have experience. Some of the boards that I serve on are $75 million organizations. So I have the concrete skills to run the city. And I also have the strategic vision about what Palm Springs will look like in 4 years or 10 years or 20 years. And I bring that. I think I'm very different from a lot of the candidates. I work full time to make a living in Palm Springs. I'm the first millennial to run for Palm Springs City Council. I'm 31, and I own some local businesses, and like I said, I work here. So I think we need those voices on City Council to include everyone in the conversations about where we should go in the future.
This question has not come up in other interviews, but do millennials in Palm Springs vote?
Do millennials vote in Palm Springs? It's an issue nationally if younger people vote. One of the things that's been really exciting about my campaign is that new people have been getting involved. Younger people, diverse people, people from different communities. There's 25,000 registered voters in Palm Springs. Only 800 of those registered voters are 18 to 24, and then there's a few thousand from 24 to 35. So there isn't a huge voting block of millennials who vote here in Palm Springs. That was as of the last election, so I think that the voters have changed, and the city is changing. But I'm saying I'm not running because I'm a millennial or because I'm a woman and I think we need more women on city council. I really am running because I believe I'm highly qualified to serve the city. I have a dedicated track record of public service. I've spent my entire career working here in our community to solve local problems, and I think that's what really sets me apart. But yes, we have to do a lot of work to make sure that everyone votes in Palm Springs.
When you look at the current city council and former city councils that you may be aware of, what are their hits and misses? What are things that you think the councils have gotten right, and where have they gotten it wrong?
Sure, and I saw your other interviews, and I did my homework on what the other candidates said, and I know you had said that a few of them didn't answer this question, and it's important because we need to talk about what was done right and what was done wrong and where we can come together as a community. I think Palm Springs is a model city for a lot of issues, and that's why I love living here. That's why I'm running for office, to continue our track record of progress and sustainable growth. I think what they did right is the redevelopment of downtown. I think there's also issues that went wrong in that process. Obviously, our former city councils messed up in terms of ethics and transparency and backroom deals. So there's some issues there, even in something like the downtown project, that a lot of residents are complaining about. I think that we've gotten to a place where not all people and interested parties have been involved in the process, so we have some bad decisions that aren't including everyone or might have unintended consequences. I think one of those examples is the leaf blower ordinance, which when it got to city council, gardeners and people who work in that industry, who work every single day with leaf blowers, came out in full force against a ban, and they said, we've never even had an opportunity to be consulted on this. I've been knocking doors every weekend for 4 months while I've been campaigning, and I've been knocking on doors for residents, and while I was doing that, I saw gardeners, and I gave them my card, and I asked them, do you know about this ordinance or a leaf blower ban? How will that impact you? Those conversations hadn't happened at the city council level or even the commission. So I think we need leaders who will take a stand and really criticize and come out with strong positions, and so that's what I'm doing. So I'm trying to give you some real answers about what city councils have done wrong, and then what we do right.
Okay, thank you for that. What are the key points you are making to earn votes?
Sure. So I started campaigning in March of this year, and so I came out a little bit later than other candidates, and the reason was because I had looked at who was running and looking at sort of the race and what it would look like. When I started earlier this year, I didn't see two people that could strategically lead our city into the future, that could represent the voices of all residents and help grow our economy. So I spent a few months talking to residents about what the platform should be, what they want to see. I think what I bring that other candidates do not is that I want to be a true elected official. So what are the interests and the issues of the people, and how can I best represent those? So I spent a long time doing my research on my platform, and I came up with the issues that people talk about again and again and again to me. I'm talking about people, progress, and practical solutions. My platform is investing in residents, so bringing local government back to basics. What is a local government supposed to provide for its residents? That's things like public safety, that's things like infrastructure, that's things like safe sidewalks and nice streets. I'm talking about economic growth. I work to make a living in Palm Springs. I understand a lot of people are struggling to make a living in Palm Springs. I think we need to grow and diversify our economy so that everyone can thrive here. I'm talking about homelessness and poverty, which is a huge issue that's affecting cities statewide and nationally, but has really impacted residents, businesses, people in Palm Springs. And I'm talking about investing in progress, making sure that we continue on progressive values and issues that really affect our city. So I'm saying progress with a purpose, things like sustainability that will impact our ability to live in Palm Springs in the next 20 years, those types of issues.
My next question is sort of answered a lot by what you've just said, so I'm going to phrase it a little differently. Is there feedback that you received during your direct communication with potential constituents that shifted your view on any platform? Clearly they informed and strengthened the things that you're standing for, but did you have any shifts in your perspective as a result of the research that you've done?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's really interesting to think about, and I've been tracking the issues that residents care about and how that's changed since March and April when I first started, and how it's changed now, right? So the issues themselves have been changing a lot. In terms of talking to residents, I'm saying that I'm running not to be a voice for any special interests or any one group of people, but really to sit down and talk to everyone affected and come up with compromises. I think a lot of this work is coalition building and compromising among different interests. So I've talked to people a lot about homelessness. I think that's one issue that people have different perspectives, and I've sat down with business owners, with people who are really impacted, who might have a different view on homelessness than I do, but I'm trying to kind of bridge those gaps so that we can come up with community solutions. We have to work together. We're a small town. We're all impacted. A lot of us know each other, and we really need to kind of bridge a lot of those gaps so that we can have community solutions as a whole.
That segues into another question. To what extent are you specifically engaged in responding to the homelessness crisis, and what solutions have you identified that you wish to advance?
Yes, thank you for asking this question. I saw last election in 2015, and I saw a lot of the candidates talking about homelessness. I think that's the same in this election. People know homelessness is a buzzword to use in their platforms. I've actually been working on homelessness for over 5 years, and I bring the expertise of serving this community and coming up with solutions as a community. So what I've been doing, I think one of the candidates said that they were the most well able to talk about this issue, and I strongly disagree. So I currently serve on the board of Well in the Desert here in Palm Springs. I've been doing that for over 2 years, and I served on their board as a lawyer, and so I've been involved in a number of those issues. I'm also on the board of Coachella Valley Housing Coalition, which is the biggest affordable housing developer in the Coachella Valley. So I've seen the spectrum of how affordable housing impacts homelessness. As an attorney, I actually represent a number of homeless people too. So I started doing this work at Stanford. We have a community law clinic, and I started representing homeless people and helping them get their benefits like Social Security, disability, because a lot of people have disabilities and maybe they've lost their benefits and they need help to get back on it. So I've been doing that work. I did that in the Bay Area, and then when I came to Palm Springs and started my career here, I started doing that in my own practice. It's been more difficult to do it here because there's no housing. And so if people don't have housing, they can't get a job, they can't stay clean for interviews. I mean, they really can't participate fully in society. So I support housing first models. I'm a strong supporter of that. Ensuring that people have a roof over their head so that they can participate in programs, so that they can get support services. I think that's really, really important. I'm saying that Palm Springs doesn't need to recreate the wheel on any issue, let alone homelessness. So many different cities are affected by this issue, and a lot of cities have implemented really good programs based on research and data that have worked. So I'm saying that we need to talk about support services located in Palm Springs so that people can get help when they need it. I'm talking about growing our affordable housing, which hasn't been built in Palm Springs for over 10 years. There's only a few affordable housing projects and their wait list is over 2 or 3 years. I've personally represented tenants who've been kicked out of their properties and become homeless and started living on the streets. Most of my clients with disabilities have no income and they're often homeless too. So I've done a lot of this work. I've worked in a domestic violence shelter. I really understand this group and how to best serve them. You know, I'm saying that while I'm on the city's homelessness task force, it's been a little frustrating to see us move backwards in progress instead of forward since we lost the only shelter in the West Valley. And I get calls from people who are homeless, and I got a call from a lady who her son is a student at Palm Springs High, and she asked me for help, and I said, you know, you can go to Indio for shelter. She said, I really can't do that. My son needs to go to high school here every day. So I think we need to take real immediate action right now to provide emergency shelter in Palm Springs and to ensure that we're making sure that there's affordable housing and other types of programs so that homelessness won't continue to increase in Palm Springs. I don't think the city should be providing services. The city's not, you know, doesn't have a social services department. I think really what we should look at is experts and agencies in the field that do this work every day, that already do homelessness emergency housing, and incentivize them and recruit them to come to Palm Springs to effectuate, you know, working models. I don't want to talk too much about that, but it's something I'm really passionate about and I really care a lot about.
I'm not required to wrap the interview at any particular time, not
Good.
like Rachel Maddow.
You're not going to cut me off.
Yeah, so so because you have been so involved, is the Palm Springs-based shelter that closed Well in the Desert, and since you're so intricately involved in that organization, why did it close?
Yeah, so with Roy's closing, so there's two things that have happened.
It was Roy's and Well in the Desert are two different agencies.
Right,
Let's
so
clarify
both
that.
Roy's closed and Well in the Desert's physical location closed as well. And both of those things happened in the last 6 months or so. So it's been a huge, huge impact. So you asking me about both or just Well in the Desert?
Well, actually, what are you aware of why both of them closed?
Yeah, for Roy's, it's a problem of lots of different cities and CVAG, and the initial plan was that all of the cities in the valley would contribute to Roy's so that it could be successful and have enough in budget to really serve the community. What happened is that a lot of the cities pulled out, and so Palm Springs was providing funding for Roy's, but you know, other cities weren't, and so it wasn't sustainable as a model there. You know, I think we could have looked at other ways to increase funding or get grant funding so that we could have continued Roy's. Roy's had some problems to begin with because it was across the freeway and there's no bus access there. So I actually was at the Path, which is a mental health facility that provides assistance to people who are homeless with mental health disorders and people with substance abuse. I went and toured their facility last week and we talked about the problems and challenges that people have even getting there. So I think as a model it wasn't sustainable in terms of really getting people there. And then there was a problem with Roy's was only ever open you know, at night. So people were being bused back to downtown Palm Springs or having to wait in the heat to go back to Roy's. So I think there's some lessons that we can learn from that. model to really make an effective model. And then the problem is NIMBYism, and people saying not in my backyard. I agree that we need a solution, but I don't want to see it. I think that takes leadership from city council members to say, well, this actually is good city planning, and the data shows that this doesn't impact neighborhoods or whatever the concern is. So that's why I'm saying we need to really legislate based on data and research, and not just emotions.
NIMBYism, not in my backyard ism.
Yes.
I've never heard that one before.
Yes.
I will remember that. And what do you know about Well in the Desert's physical location closing? What was that about?
So Well in the Desert has had a number of physical locations. They had one in Sunrise Park. They most recently were in the North End and Desert Highlands. The problem there most recently is that the neighborhood sort of spoke out and said, this is really impacting our neighborhood, and the city went in and saw if there was any kind of zoning violations or any problems there. Right now the Well is providing services that are mobile, which I think is actually a really effective model because we have people living all over, and they're able to go and provide services. So, it's a balance of all of these agencies coming together to talk about what their needs are and what the solutions are. And we do that a lot with the city's homelessness task force, which I serve on. And so we have members from Well in the Desert, from, a lot of different community groups, the police association and the department, and we all kind of come together for community issues. And I think this is an issue, and I've been saying that we can all come to an agreement. Business owners agree that, homeless people are impacting their businesses and the parks and the police department. I sat down with the police chief when I first decided to run, and I said, what do we need to do to alleviate homelessness? And he said, people need a place to go, because right now we're spending public resources pushing people down the block when they don't have a real place to go. And I think we can all come together for that community solution and make sure it works for everyone.
Okay, thank you for that. How do you feel the short-term rental issues have been addressed? Do you like the changes which have been put in place? If not, what would you do differently? What needs to be modified?
Sure. So another hot button issue.
It is, really?
I'm
kidding, of course it is.
And you had asked me what I think the city did wrong. I think that's one of those issues. So what happened was that we had a lack of enforcement for a very long time. So the city had allowed this sort of Wild West situation where there were a lot of bad actors who weren't good neighbors and who weren't policing their tenants, and those caused a lot of quality of life issues for the neighborhoods and the residents and the neighbors. And so I think that's what we're seeing now, is residents reacting to this lack of enforcement for a number of years. And that's what I'm talking about. We need strategic planning as a city so we can say, hey, there's this thing called Airbnb, and it's impacting a lot of different cities, and how are we really going to address this before it's too late and it's already really impacting our neighborhoods. And so that's one of my complaints, is there was just a complete lack of enforcement for a long time. I supported this new ordinance that represents months and months and months of work by the city's subcommittee on vacation rentals, by interested community groups, by vacation rental stakeholders, to come up with a compromise that works. So the definition of a compromise is that no party is happy, because the answer lies somewhere in the middle. So I think we're seeing that now. My complaint about some of the vacation rental ordinance is that it can be sort of burdensome. Whenever the city is regulating and adding a lot of regulations, there are often unintended consequences. So I'm trying my best to hear from residents about how it's affected them, if people are happy, if people are unhappy with the results. and what the unintended consequences are. Some people have reached out to me that they used to rent out their house as an owner part-time on the weekends sometimes when they were gone, and that the fee, the $900 fee to have a permit is too high for them, and they'll stop that. I think we need to look at all of these issues from a kind of broad public policy position and see what's the impact on our revenue, what's the impact on our neighborhoods, and really consider all of the voices in those decisions.
Do you think a fee that's tied to the actual number of rentals is more appropriate rather than an annual fee?
It's an interesting idea. I've talked to a number of people about different ways that it could be enforced, or that there could be a fee or permitting system. I talked a little bit about a good driver discount, for lack of a better word, or to steal Allstate, where Allstate's motto, where you could actually, if you have no problems after a certain amount of time, it could be reduced or something like that. The intention was to have the fee and the fines go to the enforcement. The city created a new enforcement arm and department in doing this ordinance, which is costly. And so we need to really look at the impact, and that's what my sense was, is there are some bad actors that are causing a huge problem for surrounding communities, but there are also residents who have rented out their homes with no problems at all, and their neighbors don't complain. I've talked to dozens and dozens and dozens and probably over 100 people on this particular issue, so I'm trying to get as much information as I can, and that's how I will be as an elected official. So I'm not talking to one or two people or my own neighbors. Let's talk to the entire community and come up with community solutions.
Palm Springs has put in place sanctuary city style protections for its residents and visitors. They don't use the term sanctuary city,
right?
But basically the protections are there, from my understanding. Do you support this process, and have we done enough? What more needs to be addressed?
Yes, thank you for asking this question too. It's really important. I did speak out in favor of the sanctuary city bill, or the policy with the city. And I supported the city's position to do a non-discrimination ordinance to prevent discrimination on any basis against anyone in our community. This issue is really important to me because I worked here with domestic violence victims and getting restraining orders, and I worked in our shelter serving domestic violence victims in Palm Springs and their surrounding areas. I've spoken out that this is good public policy, even from a public safety perspective. And our police department has known this for a long time, and they haven't provided immigration information to federal agencies or officials for a very, very long time as well, because they understand, and our police chief understands, that if people are afraid to report crimes, then more criminals get away with those crimes like domestic violence, and more of them stay and live in our community, criminals and abusers. So I think it's really important and good public policy to be a safe haven as a city. I've looked into this issue a lot. I serve on the Courageous Resistance legal team on sanctuary cities, and I've done a lot of research. My background is constitutional law. That's what I studied in law school, and I did a lot of work there, and I've worked for constitutional law agencies, and I've done some Supreme Court litigation in that work. So I'm well equipped to understand those issues. I don't think that we're at a strong threat of losing federal funding because of sanctuary status. And so, I did support this. I spoke out in support of it in Palm Springs and echoed the concerns of our police department, that we need to make sure that everyone's safe in Palm Springs. We live in scary political times. Real people in our community are under threat. We need leaders who will come up with policies to protect everyone, even when they're under threat.
Full disclosure, I'm a member of the Courageous Resistance as well. And in the context of these interviews, I'm not endorsing anybody. I will make my two public endorsements. But I will say, as a matter of fact, that there's 2 city council candidates that I know of because they're at all the protests that I'm at. That's why I know you. That's why I know Lisa Middleton. And it occurred to me that there are challenges in getting known by the people that you want to vote for you. But when you do have your boots on the ground for long periods of time, that's not as big of a challenge. With that said, knowing your deep connection to the courageous resistance and the rights of undocumented individuals, what would you like to say about the Donald Trump and his, in my opinion, horrific actions and what's going on in at the federal level around immigration issues?
Yes. I think that the resistance is incredibly important. I'm from California. I'm a 3rd-generation Californian, and I love that our state has good values that protect everyone, and progressive values. I'm not afraid to say that. I think it's really important. I love Palm Springs because we're a model for civil rights and equality for everyone. And I think we have a special role as a model city to continue, to progress and to progress. I'm saying let's do progress with a purpose. So I don't want to take on all these federal issues that don't affect us, but I do think when it affects our communities, we need strong leaders who will speak at rallies and who will be present in the community and who will take a stand. I disagreed with one of the candidates you interviewed when said, immigration and sanctuary cities is only a federal issue. That's not true, actually. Our police department has had a policy about if and when to take immigration status for a long time, and it's really a public safety issue, like I mentioned. So I think it's important to, have leaders who speak out and act as part of that resistance. I don't think anyone in Palm Springs, or very, very few of us, are happy with that president. I am not, and I disavow his policies. And that's why I'm, part of why I'm running is to respond, because we can control our local community. We can't control right now what's happening at the federal level, although a lot of groups are trying. But I can help our community move forward in these difficult political times.
You've already touched on this a little bit, but how do you feel about living in such a diverse, inclusive community?
I love it. It's incredible. It's just a wonderful place to live, and I'm so glad that we are so diverse. If you're asking about LGBTQ rights, it sounds like, or just diversity in general?
In general, I think that if you ask that question in this city, it's inherently inclusive of the LGBT community.
Sure.
And truth be told, our community is still pretty white. So it's not as diverse as one would want it to be. But when I ask that question, I really think about how, for example, people on opposite ends of the political spectrum will still come together to support the community and to support philanthropy, and in very many ways support each other.
Yes. Yeah, I think the, heart of our valley is to respect diversity, and that's what I'm saying is these are Palm Springs values. So I'm proud to have been endorsed by Equality California, Victory Fund, Stonewall Democrats, Democratic Women of the Desert, and I think that's really important.
Let's not forget Congressman Raul
Ruiz, our supervisor, Manny Perez, and so I've tried to get, and I've been successful at getting endorsements from a wide spectrum of groups and of elected officials, and so I'm saying I'm not running for one select group, but I really want to show support from all of these different groups so that we can come together.
Who do you admire in and out of the world of politics? Who inspires you? Who do you look up to?
Yeah, inside politics, I have to choose Michelle Obama. I know she's political herself, even though she was First Lady for a long time too. something that keeps resonating with me through the campaign is her quote, "When they go low, we go high." I've tried to live by that motto, and I've tried to, as a leader, show that that is the motto of my campaign. I'm here to run a positive, forward-facing campaign. I want to talk about the future. I want to talk about where we can go together as a community, and I don't want to dwell in any of the low points that aren't necessary. I've said that we need to come together as a community. So dwelling on a lot of negativity, I think, is really destructive for us now. We have a lot of negativity happening at the federal level in politics. I think it's trickling down to the local level, but I just have my eye on the prize to stay positive and to support our community. We have the best community and the most wonderful community members. People are doing amazing work. I was walking neighborhoods, and I found a whole group of neighbors that were collecting items for the hurricane victims and driving them there. So it's just, there's a lot of community work to support, and I just want to stay positive and have Michelle Obama be that role model. Obviously, as a woman in politics too, I have to say that she's a great role model for doing that, even if there are double standards when running while female. You asked me outside of politics. I think I have to say my husband, who's going as Mr. Christie during the election. He's got a lot of people excited because he writes Mr. Christie on the name tag. He's been so supportive of me while I've been running this campaign. This whole 6 months that I've been running, I've worked full-time and I've campaigned full-time, and he's really supported me to be able to do this, in terms of he's doing more dishes and laundry than I think he signed up for. We have a very equal relationship, and he's doing most of that, picking up the dry cleaning, things like that I'm just not able to do right now. And so it's been really incredible to have his partnership.
I love that. Is there anything you would like to add at any level to this interview?
Yeah, I really like the questions that you asked. I'm running to be ethical and transparent and open and honest for the people. I put people first in my platform. The city's motto is "The people are the city." I've explained why that's so important to me. And I'm really running for the people. And so I want everyone to know that I'm accessible. My kickoff party for my campaign was at my own home, where my husband's family's lived since 1971. My husband's actually the 4th generation to have lived in that home. And when we have kids, it'll be the 5th generation in that home. I've had a few events at my own home. I've put my phone number everywhere I can, my email address. I'm really using social media and Facebook to reach out to people and say, you can message me your concerns, and not only will I listen to you, but I'll analyze it and try to include it in my platform and in the issues that I'm talking about, because that's what we need as elected officials. They work for us. They don't work for themselves, right? They're paid with our tax dollars. And so we really need council members who will put the people first. And I do that every day as an attorney. I'm actually ethically bound to put my clients' interests above my own. And I do that even just in my career choices. Of most of my friends and colleagues from Stanford Law School went to make $200,000 in LA and DC, and I chose to make $40,000 and come work as a legal aid and a community lawyer here in Palm Springs. So I think where I come from is really important for people to know, and what I'm trying to achieve.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and to reach my viewers. A year and a half ago, when Facebook enabled live video for the Android, which I had at the time, I started these little broadcasts, and hundreds of thousands of views later, I think I might be the only journalist doing half-hour comprehensive sit-down interviews live with the candidates.
You are.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
To keep consistency, this is what I do at the end of every interview. We've got the card, we have information, and then I turn the camera around. And I thank all of you for watching. This is Nicholas Snow. You've been watching promohomo.tv, and that was one-on-one with Christy Holstege. You've seen her website address throughout the broadcast, electchristy.com. And until next time, I'm Nicholas Snow. Thank you for watching.